Welcome back to Fantasy Basketball This Week. If you are not currently subscribed, go ahead and hit that little red button below. We're currently on the road to 500 subscribers. Made a great deal to me if you did that. But today we're going to be getting into 8 tips that are going to help you dominate your fantasy basketball league. Let's get right into the action. Roll the clip. All right, gentlemen. So ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we'll be doing 8 tips today to help you dominate your fantasy basketball league. We won last year. What can I say? We had a great year, but we're going to try and do that again. We're going to try and create this culture of winning here at Fantasy Basketball this week. So let's hop right in. Rule number 1, don't follow any advice blindly, not even my advice. So every ad drop, every buy low, sell high, every draft pick, it's all situational. These decisions can be affected by what type of league you're in, points or categories, what your team needs, especially in categories when you need to kind of build that structure, figure out what you're punting, what you're going to keep, and the different rules for each league. So how many guys you're allowed to roster, your bench spots, IR, what points are more valued, or what categories are more valued, just anything like that. Weird little rules like ESPN's, you can only have a certain amount of centers. But yeah, make sure you're doing a little bit of critical thinking on your own when it comes to fantasy basketball, because everything's situational. You're not going to want to take a guy at his word for fantasy basketball advice and just do it after he says it. You're going to want to look into it and see if it fits your team's build. So tip number 1 is don't follow fantasy basketball advice blindly. Tip number 2 kind of ties into that first one. Don't succumb to fantasy basketball peer pressure. The fantasy basketball subreddit is a breeding ground for super spicy takes that aren't necessarily grounded in reality all of the time. And honestly, even a lot of fantasy YouTubers don't know what they're talking about when it comes to ad drops or what these guys' values are. So just make sure you're not succumbing to the peer pressure and picking up a guy just because some dude on YouTube said, oh, he's gonna have a great year, or some dude on Reddit said, don't pick that guy up, he's going to be terrible. Most of the time, they aren't right. So don't succumb to the peer pressure is tip number 2. Tip number 3 is be exceptionally careful with your first round pick. It cannot necessarily win you your league, but it could definitely help you lose your league. So when I do my first round pick, I typically pick a guy that is not injury prone, super reliable. And for that reason, an example would be I would never draft KD in the first round of my fantasy basketball league. And that's because he's just too injury prone, and the risk is way too high for me. I need my first round pick to play all the way through the season, be consistent, and put up first round numbers for 82 games. Another example would be Zion. Zion just announced on media day that he had an injured foot, and he previously would have been a top 10 pick if he had not had that injured foot. But because of his injured foot, now we can be a little more skeptical about Zion, and his value falls a little bit. Because let's think about this logically. He's a big dude. He plays an incredibly explosive game of basketball. He's dunking like 10 times a game. And can that last for 82 games throughout a season? I personally don't think it will. I think he'll probably injure it again somewhere throughout the season and have to sit. But that's up for you guys to decide. I mean, I would pick somebody that's durable with my first round pick. So tip number 3 is be very careful with your first round pick. Tip number 4 is there is no such thing as a must-have guy or a never roster guy. Every guy has their own value at which they become worthy of picking up. So in the previous tip, I had just mentioned that I would never draft KD in the first round because of his risk, and I just don't think it's personally worth it. However, if I'm drafting early to mid-second round and KD's still there, which is unlikely, it's more likely for a guy like Zion to fall to early mid-second round. You can bet your ass I'm scooping those guys up. Now that they fall into the second round, I don't need them to produce first round numbers. I got my first rounder for that. I need these guys to produce second round numbers, in which I believe KD and Zion are both very capable of. So just kind of keep in mind where these guys have certain values at which they all become worthy of picking up, or on the other hand, values at which they're definitely not worth grabbing. It'd be a reach to grab them there. So like I said, same goes for reverse. A hot topic on Josh Lloyd's podcast, who if you haven't checked him out, go ahead and check him out. A hot topic on Josh Lloyd's podcast is Derek White. He hypes him up. His followers go out and reach for him in their drafts. He doesn't live up to their followers' expectations because they reach for him. And Josh Lloyd gets undeserved hate because he hyped him up. All he did was hype him up. He didn't say go pick up Derek White in the 4th round. So just be, like I said, be very knowledgeable of where you want to pick guys up or where you would never pick guys up. You want to know you want to know the exact value at which a person becomes worthy of rostering. So tip number 4 is there's no such thing as a must roster or a never roster guy. Tip number 5, use the terrible ESPN rankings to your advantage. So ESPN rankings are notoriously bad when it comes to ranking these basketball players, and you can use this to your advantage against unexperienced fantasy basketball players. It can be a huge leverage point for you in your trades. So let's say you're trading with another manager and the guy that you want is lower on the rest of season, the ROS rankings. Or he's lower on those rankings than your guy is. So if he needs convincing, just be like, dude, I'm looking at this rest of season ranking right now. I just need a small forward, but your guy is ranked lower on the list. Like just take my guy. I need a small forward. I know your guy is lower on the rankings, but I need him. And that one wins you the trade because, like, you've critically thought about this. You know that he's not the equal value to what the rankings have him. And 2, now the manager is happy because he thinks he's won this trade. He's like, damn, I just got a guy that's way higher up on the rankings. This is going to be great for my team. Now he's going to be willing to trade with you again in the future. This could also be helpful and beneficial in drafts because you can kind of plant the seeds for other managers. Like, oh man, this guy's rankings here, I would never draft him here. Like, that's way too low. And then you can maybe swindle out an extra good draft pick from that situation. So tip number 5. Tip number 5 is use the terrible ESPN rankings to your advantage. Tip number 6 is a really big one, and I highly encourage you guys to do it. Turn on Twitter notifications for Woj bombs. Those of you guys who watch a lot of basketball know who I'm talking about. But Woj is almost always the first guy to break the news for anything. If you can get that news before anybody else, you're going to have an incredible upper hand against the rest of your league. This comes in handy when he's reporting on injuries, big trades, and if somebody gets a certain virus or is exposed to a certain virus and they're not going to be able to play for a while, you're definitely going to want to know the trade aspect just because it could affect your guys' usage. So tip number 6 is turn on Twitter notifications for Woj bombs. Tip number 7 is waiver wire guy wins. Now this pertains mostly to points leagues, but in my experience, the waiver wire guy always wins. The guy who's most active on the waivers. So the reason being is it does not matter how many points your players are averaging, your team averages. It's all about who scores the most points every single week. So what I like to do is I like to keep 1 or 2 rotational spots on my team where they're constantly rotating with waiver wire guys. And the reason I do this is because I can start to utilize back-to-backs for certain players. And that helps me gain more points. Obviously, if you get more minutes on your roster, the more points you're going to score, most likely. Weird things happen. But for the most part, if you're playing more minutes, you're going to score more points. And so that's why I find it incredibly valuable to be active on the waiver wires. You're going to want to find those back-to-backs and utilize them to your advantage. Drop guys that aren't playing very much throughout the week and really schedule it out. So be like, if you get 5 waiver wire ads throughout the week, have it planned out on Sunday when you're going to pick guys up or drop those guys to maximize their schedule. And yeah, every once in a while you'll lose one of your main waiver wire guys to another manager that picks them up. But for the most part, you're just going to be able to rotate these guys in and out based on how many games they're playing. This is a point that I talk about a lot on our show. So if you like that kind of content, make sure you stick around. But we're going to point you guys in the right direction for who to pick up each week, waiver wire ads and drops. It's going to give you a big upper hand against your opponent and possibly could help you win your league. So tip number 7 was waiver wire guy wins. And tip number 8 is just simply subscribe to our show. We're going to be doing shows every week. We talk waiver wire ads, drops, buy lows, sell highs, draft picks, everything you need to know. We keep it short and sweet for you guys. If you're looking for more of a long-winded and in-depth analysis of these most likely the same points, go check out Josh Lloyd. He goes into great detail. He really knows what he's talking about. I can't say the same for a lot of fantasy basketball YouTubers, but Josh Lloyd, he really knows his stuff. So if you were to follow 2 guys on fantasy basketball, it'd be me and him. So I hope those tips really helped you out, and I hope you guys go into the season knowing a little bit more, feeling a little bit more comfortable about the season. And we're gonna win some money this year. We're gonna take down our friends, because that's the most fun part, isn't it? Just being able to talk trash on your friends. Just drop my thing. Anyways, oh shoot, you guys still here? Anyways, guys, thank you for watching our 8 tips on how to dominate your fantasy basketball league. We're gonna be here all year. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and really appreciate you guys sticking around till the end. Jeez, I'm still getting comfortable on camera. This is still weird. All right, anyways, peace, guys.